day you'll buy a ride on a comet, and you'll ride into the sunset of a planet that's beyond it, beyond the wall of all there is. And you will stash it in your pocket, and you'll take it to Manhattan, man, where your grandma's 10 and you are 10. You're not a family man, you're best friend. And you will hold it together under the oldest running water of the river of each other, with the power of the future. One day you'll ride into the dawning.
Alright, hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Rob here at Smirking Gun Reviews. We're back to talk more Perpetual Grace Limited. We're on episode 8, so full spoilers, if you have not seen this episode. Sorry for the break here. I know that the show's been over now for a little bit, you know, just like maybe a couple of weeks now. I had a lot going on the channel and in my own life, and so I didn't want to stress myself out too hard. I always intended to get right back to my regular schedule, so sorry to anybody who was waiting on this and didn't, you know, doesn't really watch any of my other videos. But I was working with other people and getting ready for my trip to Chicago this Friday to Wizard World. I was waiting on my Captain America Endgame costume to come in. So, but we're back. I got lots of notes. Another great episode. Great titles. This one's written by Steve Conrad, directed by James Whitaker. It's called Fiveever. Again, great titles. That's really, really great titles. And right before I get started, since I was beating myself up because I was saying that Terry O'Quinn's character, Wesley Walker, Texas Ranger, was Leslie for a long time, I feel less bad now, because on the IMDb page, under the description of this episode, they list Terry O'Quinn as Terry O'Neill. So I'm just some, you know, asshole in Illinois. This is IMDb, you know. You shouldn't do that. That's pretty bad. I mean, not like criminal or anything, just... Okay, so we open on 6 years ago with the little girl that died. And, man, this is bad, because it's like, she's disappearing like he did. So we know that she was learning the same kind of magic that he did. And Paul is just such a childlike person that it was hard. Like, I was struggling with this because I was really hoping that Paul may be not as bad as I was beginning to think. But everybody seems to have like this kind of like, they're good but they've done something bad. Even like New Leaf, who is a murderer, has murdered people. I feel like he's a redeemable character. I think a lot of these people are redeemable. I'm not sure if, you know, like, I think Pa and Ma in some ways have tried to redeem themselves a little bit, but I'm not 100% sure, because every time I think they might be okay, I think, no. But in this scene, she hears the plan. And apparently Paul has been pulling this kind of scam before. At first I thought they were discussing the original plan to rip off his mother and father. Man, I don't know, we know that's his mother and father. Maybe that's how we got the idea. But he was going to rip off the little girl's father, who's a deacon, and she was hunkering down in his little disappearing act. She heard the whole thing. And I went, and you could just see on his face, like, how, oh, I really wish he hadn't heard that. And so, yeah, so they're going on Star Search tryouts. At least that's the story anyway. At the time I was first watching this, I actually believed it for a minute. Like, oh yeah, they're going. And then I realized that this was just his ploy to get her on a bus, get her away from her family, get her from telling anybody. And it's like he knew that she was going to tell. And she's saying, she wished she hadn't heard, and wish that the magic was for real, and that would be cool that she could just never have heard it. And they have this, like, she's going to tell. And that Paul's done this before, and who killed her? That's what I want to know. That's what I started this episode wondering. We got Paul and James, who are, they're trying to get a hold of Hector, and he's not answering. And it's probably because, hey, after the last time we saw him, Pa kind of got his head turned around to, like, give all this up, love his family, forget about all this nonsense. But seriously, since there's so many times that they do the disappearing trick, I was really going, how did he do that? How does he do that? And James asks for me, thankfully. And, he's like, I don't want to betray magic. That's a big deal. And James has to remind him that, well, hey, being being accused of murder is a pretty bad thing, too. But, so he tells him that he just, like, I hunker down. I've gone through rigorous hunkering training, and I scurry. And I'm watching this, and I'm just like, I know that maybe I'm supposed to have a suspension of disbelief, but I'm just like, fuck you, that's that's just some really fancy editing, because I know from stealth, and he's not scurrying. It's just really, we're just supposed to believe that he's really that quick. And I guess, for sake of suspension of disbelief, fine, okay? But I continually have a problem with this. I guess that's why I don't go to too many magic shows, because I'm too busy, like, going, how did they do that? I have to know how they did it. Like, I'm one of those, I have to break things apart. It's like the person who takes apart a car engine just to figure out how to put it back together. Meanwhile, New Leaf is on his way to kill Paul/James. We also get this, like, new, very patriot speech, which is about putting out fires, starting new ones. Every time you solve one problem, you create a new one. It's very much like the jellyfish situation that was in Patriot. I really dig that, because, it all starts with him just saying, like, are you making fun of me? Are you kind of downgrading me, or denigrating me over every time you keep saying putting out fires? And I was a fireman, and, part of my problem is what I did in my past, and it's kind of the reason why I'm even out here. But Paul is just, he's so, and they talk about Paul's intelligence as kind of a big thing in this episode. We also find out that Ma and Dave, they're not really brother and sister, that they met in a foster home, or did they say the orphanage? I can't remember, but they've known each other in that way. They've all been kind of close, and he's known Byron too. But they're trying to come up with, how do they find, Ma and Pa aren't dead, they're on their way back here. It's probably only going to be about 10 hours before they get here. And they need to find some dead bodies as quick as possible so that they can declare them legally dead, get them buried, and get the money. They're still on this, and it's kind of just like, oh my God, I can't believe we're all still really going through with this. But neither of them can come up with any good ideas. Paul's just like, well, why don't we rent some old people, tell them to hold their breath. But this is basically when New Leaf arrives. Paul immediately does this trick and disappears, and I love that whole thing, because that's where we just basically we get our credits. And we have Dave. Dave can, throughout this episode, is just kind of pondering the wishes of Ma and Pa's burial, and kind of like Paul's, like, past. And it's Kurtwood Smith has to do a lot with very little. He's just kind of gives us a little bit of a backstory. We see a little bit more of how he knew Byron and Ma. Was there Lillian? The whole thing with the brush and the comb, that they want to be buried with it, and that it's very much like kind of a, I guess I don't really know where I'm going with that yet. It's kind of a, he has this, like, saying that he says later on about, and it has to do with the Fiveever stuff. But New Leaf is going to kill James, who he thinks is Paul, but not Paul. He knows he's not Paul. But Paul actually, kind of does something here. He actually kind of like does it. I expected him to fully let James just get killed because Paul's a coward, but he actually, does his little trick. Says, "I'm Paul Brown." Newleaf tries to kill him. I guess he's not that great of a shot, or he's upset because of the tears. Come over here. Oh man, I'm like, come over there. And then he goes through this thing. He's not a bad guy, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, they're saying he's like magic. He's good at that one thing, but I mean, James is really like he's stuck in this, and I really feel like he should just kind of walk away, but he can't. He really wants to try to help this family that he's the lives that he's ruined because of his own cowardice. That maybe he should have died in that fire instead of the other guy. So again, we've kind of got all these guys have kind of had this like kind of uncourageous, kind of cowardly life, where Paul has his own cowardice with the little girl, and just kind of how he's lived his life. We got Newleaf, who he's been fucking up his life since he was a kid, and getting himself in trouble and ending up murdering somebody over his family. You got James, who screwed things up by being a coward in the fire. Just a lot of blame to go around. I also like how he says there is no future life for us, and he gives this story, this speech. And speaking of speeches, like I had somebody in my comment section say, this show's nothing but speeches and monologues and they don't mean anything. And I'm like, this person's probably like, can't miss The Bachelorette or something, I don't know. But, because this show is not just speeches and monologues, and it does mean something. But anyway, he gives a speech about supergiants, like stars and stuff, and how they live this short life and they explode, and it's all about, they end in violence, and he's basically comparing them and their lives. That, somebody should have told you this. Like, didn't you have a dad who would tell you this about supergiants, and that, our lives are going to end in violence. Like, that's just kind of, it's almost like a predetermined thing for Newleaf to think about. And that his parents had this old people love that was really special, and that they only, they died 11 seconds apart, and it's all really beautiful and nice. Also, I wrote down, hunkering is bullshit, but it looks great, because the whole thing just keeps happening, hunkering and hunkering and hunkering. Anyway, so they get in this talk about the lens crafters again, and the juniors under 14. I just wrote, logic amongst stupidity. Like, it's logical, but they just, every time somebody says something kind of smart, somebody says something really stupid right after it. And it's usually coming out of Paul's mouth. So, family's Fiveever. Very much something a kid would say, I feel like. I mean, like, Paul's dumb, but it's almost like like how a child says things that's not dumb, it's just childlike, like an innocence. But Paul's not innocent either. He's got, like, and I love how they explain that later on too. But it's like, saying like Fiveever is kind of like, family's Fiveever is like I love you 3000 from like Endgame, where the little girl says that to Tony Stark, and it becomes kind of like this motto throughout the whole movie. Then now there's fucking T-shirts and all sorts of stuff because it's clever, but it is very much something a kid would say. But then they want to, they just, boom, come right out with, we want to use your parents to be the bodies to get the money. And we're going to run them over with a truck to make them unrecognizable. And Newleaf's like, rewind that shit? Yeah, fucking A right. If somebody just all of a sudden says, yeah, okay, so we need this money and we need you to give us your parents as dead bodies so that we can run them over, have them declared dead, have them take the place of Ma and Pa. Yeah, it's kind of like the record scratch, like, oh, like the record jump, and it causes like the break in tension, or more like the like, what? Also, the Undertaker is the guy who played Ichabod on Patriot. Amazing. I was going to put in a bunch of clips and stuff, but I got really tired because it is about 10:43. I was going to find some clips for for Ichabod, and maybe I'll do that for next video, but tonight it's just about talking about the show. And then we get this really great scene between the kid who plays Glenn and Terry O'Quinn's Walker, Texas Ranger. I love this scene. It's hilarious, but it's also serious, and there's some acting going on here, man. I love it. But Glenn, he's being interviewed, and he can't basically understand anything that he's saying. And poor Wesley Walker, Texas Ranger, is having to explain all the words like law enforcement, clump-haired, words that don't, where he says a word starts with a 3. Words don't begin with numbers, Glenn. So it's like, no, it's law enforcement officer, it's the word compelled, it's the word jurisdiction. I was laughing, man. This was great. Because he's trying to figure out how to talk to this kid, knowing that he's had this brain injury, and it's like not registered until later. So he's really talking. He thinks he's the king of Texas. I love it. James runs into the Undertaker again, who seems to be pretty shady himself. He doesn't want the government involved. He doesn't want red tape. Or maybe it's just like because they were in Mexico, there could be problems. I don't know. Either way, it's just he's creepy standing there. But Walker's talking to him, and he's like talking to Glenn some more, and questioning him about why he's friends with a 42-year-old convicted murderer. And Walker tells him about the dead girl and the seriousness of this, because he says, like some people are just depraved. And Terry, he is so great here as always. I would just love to be like a fly on the wall while I watch him act in a scene. I mean, if I ever see like the chance to like see him in a play or something, but like out here in the middle of nowhere, trying to get to a play, where somebody like him would be like hard to figure out how to get to. We get the scene where Paul is trying to show James how to float properly, and it's about thinking light, drop the weight of your mind. He's starting to sound more like how Charles Manson might talk from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Think light, man. Drop the weight of your mind. This is all going to fall quickly, like dominoes, with people like Paul. Like, this whole plan, once the dominoes start to fall, it's just going to be kablamo. Feel the lightness of the future. And he's just like, James is having a really hard time not laughing at this whole thing. He's like, hello, come in, how are you? And I wrote, Paul is an idiot, but it's a nice speech and funny, so I can forgive it. James tries to talk to Glenn's dad, who is drunk dance fighting. Michael Chernus is always great. James trying to explain to him that they've gotten his son, except he doesn't say we, that he's gotten himself into some bad stuff, and that he needs to tell Walker, Texas Ranger, kind of get in the middle of all of that. And I just realized something, but I'm going to talk about it later. Walker is intense and beautiful, is what they say, that he's carved out of the waterfalls of time. And all I could think of was, damn, New Leaf. Like, he's always got they really give New Leaf some of the best lines in this show. And we get more of the I'm a special boy. We find out there are special girls, but the girls are really boys. It's really more like a kind of an unofficial thing. It means you're true blue. So we find out that the girls are all here. So the gang has all arrived, and minus Hector, who we find out he is out. He's done. We find out also his writing has gotten a little bit better now that he's given up this whole mess. And a great little scene from Luis Guzman, that he's just out. He's done. But what they don't know is that Walker, Texas Ranger, heard the phone call, heard the ringing of the phone, and he's now on the property, heading right towards him. Hey, he goes, who's in there? And he says, hey. And I'm like, what the hell does he mean, hey? And so does Walker. And he goes, hey, that's what's in the barn. I didn't say what's in the barn. I said who's in the barn. I felt like we were about to get into a who's on first situation here. But, I mean, this is where Walker is getting, like, he's had it. And this is where, he's been a professional. He's dropped an F-bomb or two, but, I mean, he's now, like, another fucked up thing and a bunch of fucked up stuff. And if this keeps going, like, this is another fucked up thing in your orbit, and it's gonna get really fucking ugly for you. So he lets him into the barn because he says that he saw somebody. And if he doesn't, it's going to get worse if he doesn't let him go in there. But they go in there. There's nobody there. I said, are they hunkering? Yes, they are. Because they even say, we're hunkering. So we flash back to 6 years ago to the magic cabin. So now we know for sure he had this all planned out. And again, he's trying to not scare her, but he's kidnapping her in like this, like in this like friendly way. It's so Paul really is just he's dumb smart, like they talk about here in a minute, like what Dave talks about in a minute. Like he's a bad person trying to do it in the best possible way, but it's just like, no, crime is crime, and when you're got a child involved, it's like, oh well, I don't want to kill her, but so I'm going to kidnap her and put her in a cabin full of candy and food and stuff and make it all look like magical, put her in real handcuffs and leave her there so that I can do the job. And it's just, and again, it's just something that somebody with mental problems would come up with. And that's where I figure out, like, she gets out, right? She has to get out, and she drowns because she probably tries to do the trick in the water maybe, or she falls in the water and can't get out, or maybe she can't swim. I don't know, but this all goes bad because he left her there. So, but we get a little bit more about Paul, because Dave has this thing where he says that Paul went to Harvard but not as a student, and he's kind of basically an idiot savant, that he's dumb smart or smart dumb. He says things like Fiveever, and that like lift and fall this, and then he talks about the burial, like lift and fall Fiveever. And so it really does, like, I guess they were testing Paul for, I don't know if they were trying to prove if he was an idiot savant or a genius or just some sort of weird gifted person that they never quite figured out, and we still don't really know. I don't understand Paul because he's kind of all over the place. And then we have I Don't Know You. So New Leaf is confronting Paul because they're asking, what they're asking is insane. We want to run your parents over with a car. And he's not wrong, and pretty much Walker and New Leaf are in the same position here, that they want to know what the fuck is really going on, like all of it. None of this like piecemeal stuff that they've been doing, kind of stringing them along. And with Walker, the whole thing with get him to the yogurt shop kind of situation, it's now or never. So they both basically say, we don't see what James says to Walker, but we know that Paul tells New Leaf about the little girl, and that he didn't kill her outright, but he's caused her death. That the circumstances that he, if he could have just said, what, I'm out, the girl heard the situation and gave it up. But getting the money was more important because he was like going to run out of the country and everything. And he thought everything was going to be fine, like some stupid kid would. And, that he's going to think of her Fiveever. And so in a lot of ways, this is like this episode's kind of explaining Paul. And again, how a lot of this has got to do with fathers and sons and mistakes and can you move on and all that stuff. But they're still kind of going along with this plan instead of just stopping. Because we still have Ma and Pa coming. We've got the Englishman, whose name I'm forgetting right now. If I could look back in my notes, I'd probably find it. But he's still on his way here. So there's just all sorts of stuff that's coming to a head. We've only got 2 episodes left. So we should be getting to it since I'm on vacation, I'll be getting to it before the end of the week. And I just want to bring up, somebody on Twitter was like talking about how people review things without actually reviewing them. And I hope everybody doesn't feel like that, like I'm just recapping. I am describing the episode, but I'm talking about how I feel and how it made me feel. And that's kind of my own personal touch to how I do some reviews. Not all reviews, but certain ones, especially stuff that I really like. I like to explain out. I'm not the only one who does those, so if this is not your kind of review, I apologize. I don't know of anybody else that does Perpetual Grace, but if this is not your cup of tea, fine. Just try not to be nasty about it, because you don't have to watch these. Nobody's putting a gun to your head. You know, you can just click off of it. But anyway, if you did, though, like this review, please hit that like button. Comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell for all notifications, all that rigmarole. You can find me on Twitter at YESSHH8. That is Yesh8. You can find me, I did a video with D's Reviews where we did an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. live stream. I also did 6 videos with a man named Gino Reynolds from The Real Gino. That's REEL Gino, Geno, where we had videos about the best Tarantino moments. We had a video about our best and worst and most disappointing of the year. I did include Perpetual Grace Limited as one of the best things all year. I even played the full trailer, and I sang the praises of this show. So if you want to check out that video, that's on there. We also did some MCU videos, one on my channel, one on his. We reviewed the movie Good Boys together, and we also tried New Coke because it was sponsored. It was a big thing with Stranger Things for some reason. What else? We just put up the new video for X-Men, the animated series, Dark Phoenix Part 1. We've been doing Batman Arkham Knight walkthroughs. We just started doing Spider-Man PS4 DLC walkthroughs. So much is going on the channel. We're also going to have The Boys up tomorrow, episode 5. We'll have The Leftovers, episode 5, I believe, as well, coming up. And then back all around, Doctor Who, season 8, all that stuff. So we have tons of stuff on the channel coming around. Again, I want to thank everybody for watching these. And if you're not watching, if you want more, go find Patriot on Amazon. They've got 2 seasons there. It's all from the same people. And so anyway, this is Rob at Smirking Gun Review saying I know I'm getting a little long-winded here, but I have a lot to say. So again, thanks a lot, and we will see you on the next video.